Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers, where my co-host just slapped the shit out of her own hands too hard.
We don't have a clapper. We need to get a clapper.
Yeah, I don't think they're very expensive. I feel like it'd be so cute if we could get like a pink one or like an aquamarine one. But welcome back. It's been a while since you've heard from me. Gaia and Caboose recently just did an episode, which I'm very excited to listen to. I haven't listened to it yet, but I did get the Spark Notes. And we were just going to piggyback off of what they talked about, which was growth. So The theme of today's episode is growth with Callista. Ballista.
Oh, no, not Ballista.
I know. She comes out whenever she feels like coming out. So growing. What's it like growing with me?
Wait, the first thing I asked Caboose was, what does growth mean to you?
What does growth mean to me?
Y'all, we didn't prep that, so she has no idea.
That's okay. Growing to me means improving yourself, not only just physically by, really taking ownership of your health and your fitness and your nutrition, but growing mentally and emotionally, in the sense that, just growing a better understanding of yourself and other people around you, and growing in relationships. So growing in all aspects of your life. That's what
I love that.
Growing is like to me. What's growing like to you?
Well, you'll have to listen to the past episode to hear that answer.
There is some wrecking balls over there going, Callista didn't do her homework.
They're like, we already heard Gaia's answer. Can we skip this part?
Fair enough.
Okay, so then your question for me, now that we know what growth is for you.
Yes.
You don't know what growth means to me.
I don't.
So.
That's okay. But,
surprise.
My question to you, I guess, is what has it been like growing with me? For those of you who don't know, I don't know if age, I feel like age in a growth episode has a lot to do with it. Gaia has known me since I was 19.
She's still 19 to me.
Yeah.
She's still a child.
Explain a little bit about your timestamp with people.
So I don't know if this applies to everyone, but it very much applies to me. Probably the only exception being Caboose, because he feels, I guess, because we've grown up together for so long.
Yes.
Because we got together when we were 20. So he feels like timeless, essentially, the same way I feel like ageless.
Yes.
Because in my brain, I'm still like a kid. But I have this thing where when I meet someone and they're a specific age, it's like they just stay that way. So I met my stepdad when he was 34, and to me, he is always 34. So it's really weird thinking about the fact that I am 35, so I am now a year older than he is, even though I know that that's not how time works.
Physically, that's not true, but mentally.
But in my head, I'm like, oh, he's 34. So then every time people are like, oh, what birthday is it? I'm like, is it his 36th birthday? I think that's the birthday it is.
That's funny. And so my timestamp with Gaia is 19.
So to me, you're a kid and you'll always be a kid, even though you're definitely not a kid anymore.
No, but I do still feel like a kid.
I don't think that feeling ever goes away. I think if that feeling goes away, you fucked up.
I think that, I think there's some inner healing to do with your inner child if that feeling ever goes away. Yeah. And oddly enough, in an episode about growth, there is a lot of stigma with being called a kid.
Yeah.
Which is so weird to me. Why? Why?
I don't understand that either, because when people, obviously if someone my age calls me a kid, I'm going to laugh. Or someone younger than me calls me a kid, I'll probably have a good chuckle. No one's done that yet.
Watch people do it now.
Whatever. I'd probably honestly, it's the whole sweetie darling, or if someone calls me any sort of what normally is seen as a terrible pet name. I'm like, oh my God, you called me doll face? I love it.
Love doll face, yeah.
So I'd probably love it. But I think the only person that calls me kid is Donna from Tattooed Arm. And I've always loved that she called me kid.
Absolutely.
Because I also think there's just an ownership to it when someone's you're my kid. So that doesn't mean, I obviously didn't have you physically.
No.
But I see it as a responsibility to help guide you through life.
Absolutely. And as I think that's where, to bring tattooing into this conversation, that's where a lot of people, I guess mess up might be the right word. There's really no way to eloquently or nicely say this, but that's where a lot of people mess up with their apprentices, is the fact that when you have an apprentice, it's like taking on a kid. It really
Yeah.
is like adopting a kid, because they're never not your responsibility. And if you think that just because they graduated and that's just it, no, dude, you're still that person's mentor for the rest of their life, you know?
Yeah, I think it's something that, like, for me, it's that like apprenticeship mentor relationship does not just mean, hey, I'm going to teach you how to tattoo, because I think that tattooing, I think a lot of careers, honestly, I don't think ours is special this way.
Yes.
I think so many careers take up such a huge part of your life, like energy wise, that you shouldn't be just showing up and being like, hey, let me show you how to operate a machine. Let me show you how to do a consultation. Let me show you just these like basic fundamentals of tattooing. But it's, hey, let me show you the ethics behind like my beliefs for tattooing, like, and the relationship you can have with clients and the connection and like the entire like my personal ethos for it. And I think that like that's what you should be looking for in a mentor, but that's what mentors should be delivering.
Absolutely.
Because if you think about like the most fundamental teachers you ever had in school, they didn't just show up and teach you math, they taught you about life.
Oh my God, yes. And I love the way you put that, because it's not just like personal ethos with tattooing, it is personal ethos with life too.
Yeah.
You want to find a mentor that like you do honestly click with, and you do have the same, like a very similar moral compass. And I'm not saying the same moral compass, everybody's moral compass is slightly different, but very similar beliefs, just not towards tattooing, but outside of tattooing in your lives as well.
Yeah.
And like, there are certain things, I relate tattooing a lot like dating. And sometimes it just simply doesn't work out, and that's totally fine. You gave it your best shot. But yeah, you met me at a very like pivotal time in my life. Very there was a lot of change happening because I was like fresh out of community college, just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about like being able to like be in the industry, because the second I was able to like just hang out at a tattoo shop, that meant the world to me. And when I was 19 and we met, I was like at the peak of just in my mental illness, like depressed, but not doing anything about it. You know, if anything, I was exacerbating my own mental illnesses of like being depressed and anxious. Not only because like, sure, those feelings like were real and like what I was going through was real, but like also I was exacerbating it because I just didn't have the language that like we have now, where like a lot of the things that I was excited about, I would just turn it into a negative thing and be like, I have really bad anxiety around this. And then you introduced the concept of, are you excited? Because they feel the same in the body. And like, that's like, that to me, when I was 19 wasn't a nice thing to hear, but that's what I needed to hear. You know?
I think that's a part of growth, that like growth can be painful.
Yes.
So when you're, and like, it's, being a teacher is not fun in that sense. That,
oh my
like,
God, yeah.
I often feel like a bad guy because I ask those hard questions or I say those hard statements.
Yes.
And it's because those statements, you know, I learned them as well. They were said to me, or like in, you know, that wasn't said directly to me. That's Brene Brown's work. But, you know, she spreads that knowledge. So obviously it was said to me in that sense.
Yes.
And then going and continuing that message that, you know, that like this can genuinely like help someone's life and like affect their life, because just changing that language of like, are you anxious or excited? Because viscerally they feel the same, and scientifically in the body they feel the same. And your choice is whether or not you decide I am anxious about this or I am excited, and then the word that you put on it will then determine how you're going to perceive the situation. And so having that like lesson, it was a hard lesson for me to learn as well. But being able to pass that along, there is like a beauty in that when someone accepts it. But a lot of times, like, you know me, I have those hard conversations with people all the time. And a lot of people don't accept it. And then it's like hard because you are presenting people with these hard topics and they think you're a bad guy for it.
Yes, because, you know, you dare challenge. You know, it's almost one of those things where you dare challenge the way that they feel. And again, it's not an attack on them, but like you said, growth can be painful. And it's like what they say about the truth. Like, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And to me, like, I don't know, I feel like we present people with a lot of opportunities for growth. And there's really no other way to do it other than, like, just saying what's on your mind. And, like, we're very clear on, like, we're just going to stumble through this. This is hard to say, and I'm sure this is going to be hard to hear. But, like, there you go. Like, you're not helping your anxiety.
Just
or, like...
to be clear to listeners, we say that to each other a lot. I would say probably at least 3 or 4 times a week we'll be talking about something, and I will not know, like, an eloquent way to put it, and I'll just be like, okay, might sound mean, I'm just gonna say it, and then like, she knows it comes from a place of love.
Oh, for sure.
And so does
always.
That it comes from a place, and when you preface with that, like, hey, I don't know the nicest way to say this, so then we say it, and then it allows us to, like, break it down in different ways.
Yes. Which also is a great segue, because when I find myself having hard conversations with people too, I've realized that, like, a lot of the times I want to do the easy thing and just brush the problem under the rug and just not acknowledge it. But it is a great segue into a hard conversation. That's where I found a lot of growth, where I'm now able to be like, listen, there's no way around this. There's no other way for me to say it, but this is how it is, and X, Y, and Z. You know? And just knowing that, like, their reaction is not my responsibility. That's also a big growing point.
Accepting that, like, hey, look, however you take this, like, as long as I present it to you from a place of love, because for me, that is, like, the center of everything, where it's like, if I'm presenting you with a problem, it's because I care enough about our relationship that I want to fix it. Or if I've, like, seen, like, you know, like, possibly, like, toxic habits, then, or even where I am doing those things and I'm like, hey, I need your help addressing these issues, then having those hard conversations allows you to, like, grow as a relationship.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's like, I got this from the Sparks Notes version of Guy and Caboose's episode, but when Caboose was relating growth to, like, a tree, you know, and it's growing in all different directions, I also was just like, it's beautifully put, but also, you know, there's a lot of internal work. The tree's not just growing outside and you see the branches, it's also growing underneath the ground. The roots are spreading, you know, and that to me symbolizes, like, connection with people. That, like, hard growth is, like, you know, you're spreading out and connecting with all the other trees around you.
Oh, I love
that. Because that's what they do, right? Scientifically, I don't know. Some trees do that.
I saw it as, like, the roots were, like, that internal work that you're doing yourself.
Also that,
But I love that internal work then connects you to other people who are also doing their internal work.
Absolutely.
So then you have this whole, like, community.
The forest, you know? That's your people. And I feel like a lot of people, and this is also hard to say, now to say it out loud, a lot of people don't want to grow, unfortunately. Like, I run into the problem a lot where, like, someone's like, I'm struggling with this. And I'm like, well, you know, it's probably because you do X, Y, and Z, and you're in this cycle, and they do not want to hear it, you know? Or they'll go, yeah, no, absolutely. No, you're for sure. I should absolutely get on it, and then get back into the cycle. And there's nothing for me to do. I've already presented you with, like, hey, these are your habits, and this is why you're feeling miserable. And, like, I'm very big on, like, take ownership of your mental health and your physical health. Like, this is your life. You are able, and I get it, there are certain parameters that we cannot change, but you are able to the best of your abilities, you should, to your biggest potential, take ownership of your life and just run towards it.
I completely agree. Well, I think that's the thing, is that I think a lot of people choose that easy option of saying, hey, I don't control this. Where it's like, look, if you know, like, we'll just harp on women's rights. We don't currently control what's going on within our government. However, you have a choice. You can either just roll over and say, okay, this is how it is, done. Or you can use whatever emotion you have about it, whether it be, like, in my case, like, it's very, like, very passionately angry. And, like, when Caboose and I and you, like, when we were all talking about it, and Caboose just got frozen in anger. And I was like, okay, but, like, how about we take that anger and we channel it into doing good?
Absolutely.
And for me, it's very much like, I am so like solution based, then I'm like, so instead of getting stuck here where I'm going to say, hey, I'm pissed off about this, and then just making a couple posts on social media and being like, well, there you go, I expressed my anger, or like just yelling with some people, I say, okay, let's take this, because anger is just your body's way of letting you know that something is wrong. So it's saying, hey, something is wrong, how do I fix this?
Yeah.
And even if I cannot fix the big problem right now, I can go individually to people and change their minds.
Yeah.
And I can go to people and be like, hey, donate your money, donate your time, like help people in need right now. And also let's like address this long term. I think that for a lot of people, the easy option, well, actually, we're going to touch on that in a second. The easy option, I say that in quotations, is to not do anything, because that doing something can be painful. It's, you know, when you stand up for anything, people are bound to dislike you.
Especially as a woman.
Yeah. So, like, no matter what you stand up for, someone's going to fucking hate you for it. And a lot of people then won't stand for anything. But then, like, we were discussing this earlier, that, like, change and growth are painful. But we came across the idea that, okay, it might hurt for you at that moment to have a realization of, like, you know, the realization that I participated in systemic racism and still being a white presenting person.
Yep.
I'm part Mexican. Well, I was like, that's probably fucking weird. People are like, bitch, you're white.
You're like,
which
just
I
to
am,
clarify.
yes. But having, like, it sucks every day knowing that, like, there are people that suffer because they don't look like me. And that, like, there is privilege that I have.
Yep.
But instead of just being like, hey, I'm going to bury my head about this, and knowing that, like, I have participated in those, like, systems and continue to benefit from those systems.
Yep.
I then say, okay, swallow that hard pill. Because first off, my pill is nowhere near as hard as anyone else's to fucking swallow.
Yep.
With the exception of white men. There's, like, the only one that's better than mine. Their pill is slightly smaller than mine. But, like, accepting that and, like, having that momentary pain for me means that I'm willing to change, so I'm not causing long-term pain for others.
I love that. Yeah. Other than the other way around.
Yeah, which is if I refuse to fucking change, which kind of goes back to what Kubis and I talked about last episode, where he had that thought process of, you married me the way I am. This is who I am. I'm not changing. You get over it. And it's caused years of, like, turmoil.
Yeah.
Because where I have grown and changed and the world has grown and changed, he's like, this is me. This is who I am. Done. It's like those people who, like, decide, okay, I'm a Republican at the age of 18, and then can, like, look and be like, wait, the Republican Party no longer agrees with anything I agree with.
Yeah.
But they still run around saying I'm a Republican, because the idea of changing that is so scary versus just being like, hey, look, dude, you are not these things. Go ahead and, like, change it there, because then you're going to cause less pain elsewhere.
I think that's where I'm really grateful about, like, because there's, I don't know, at one point in my, like, adolescence, that was a big deal on the internet, especially when, like, politics were, like, being brought up, and there was a big deal about, like, hey, change is good, like, you should be constantly adapting your beliefs and, like, looking at, like, I don't know, look at the evidence around you, look at the people around you, look at the people who are being hurt, and just, if you need to change your belief, there is no harm, no foul in that. We welcome you with open arms.
Like, I think it's the weirdest thing that it's, like, part of this American culture that if somebody changes their mind about something, they're like, oh, well, you're flip-floppy. Like, nah, dude, there's a difference between evolving and growing, which is the very scientific method. It's, I have a fucking hypothesis.
Yep.
I do this. I say, oh, shit, that hypothesis was wrong. Here is the actual results.
Absolutely.
Or I have this hypothesis. Oh, look, I've done this experiment. It backs it up. Cool, my hypothesis is right. But there is no, like, ooh, yes, good job. My hypothesis is right. Like, no, dude, you should just be, like, constantly reevaluating things and evolving to be like, hey, let me change my beliefs. Because, like, quite frankly, it was super hard for me with like police brutality. That one hit super close to home because my dad was a police officer. My aunt was a police officer. And then to be like, wait, I have to look at police officers in this different light, and you can't play that bullshit of just a couple bad apples.
Oh yeah.
When so much of it is happening.
There's so much evidence around it. And again, like being able to take the time to be like, okay, I'm going to set aside my personal interactions with the people that I love who are police officers and know that like, I'm going to, again, look around and see who's getting hurt.
Instead of being like, hey, this makes me feel uncomfortable because I loved that my dad was a police officer because I saw it as serving people, which was very much why he did it. Same as my aunt. However, that does not mean that, like, just because they were good, everyone is good.
Yep, absolutely.
And so looking at the actual, like, issue at hand, and I think that's, like, part of growth is looking at your own beliefs and being like, hey, how have I participated in, like, not doing the best I could be doing, and then evolving those, like, thought processes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think about it a lot, too, because, I don't know, a lot of people think that it is, again, an attack on themselves somehow for, like, changing their beliefs or, like, just accepting, I don't know, not fault, but, gosh, what is the word I'm looking for? But just accepting that, like, yes, you had a part to play in it. Like, honestly, dude, feel guilty about it, but, like, move on. Do better.
Yeah, I think that's that, like, hey, like, take a minute to be like, hey, I feel bad, and then say, what can I, like, honestly, what can you do to feel better about it?
I channel whenever I feel guilty about anything. Well, I shouldn't say anything, because, like, as someone who was, like, raised to be a people pleaser and now has, like, been able to break that down. But
growth right there.
But when I do feel guilty for, like, a valid thing and, like, you know, I accidentally hurt someone or, like, I played a part in the systemic, like, fall of Roe v. Wade, you know, I take that energy and I channel it into, again, being better, growing.
Yeah.
You just take that energy. You don't have to just sit in this guilt and, like, throw a pity party and just be like, I'm the worst person ever. No, you take that energy and you become better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how energy works. You can just keep on recycling it into something that, like, is bigger than you. But yeah, no, I feel like I've exponentially changed as a person in the last, like, few years that we've been friends.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Not that you've changed. I mean, obviously you have grown a lot, but I feel like I've changed because, like, you've taught me. We've talked about this before, like, a lot more, like, body positivity,
right,
and a lot more, like, accepting myself for who I am. And I touched on this last episode, how, like, my current thing is, like, looking at myself right now with kinder eyes, not the whole, like, looking at past pictures with kinder eyes, because I had that this morning where I got, like, pictures from 12 years ago that popped up in my time hop, and I was like, damn, I look way hotter now than I did then.
Yeah, you do.
I was like, I showed her the pictures before this episode, and, like, y'all, I'm definitely better looking at this point than I was then. And, like, that feels really good because somebody who has, like, a lot of body dysmorphia and a lot of, like, issues around food, to be able to, like, come to this truly healing place, understanding that I might spend the rest of my life having problems with eating and food and stuff. I'm not going to say I will, because I don't know. I might fucking unlock that key one day. Fingers crossed. Or this might just be an ebb and flow situation where sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm not so good.
Yeah.
And just kind of accepting that, like, always looking to be better in it, but being able to celebrate all the little wins. So I don't wake up every morning being like, oh, I hate my body, but instead being like, bitch, you're hotter than you used to be. So, like, who knows? You might get hotter in 10 fucking years.
Absolutely. Age like fine wine.
Yeah.
And while you do that, like, learn to love yourself in this moment. You know what I mean? Like, that love should only, like, grow.
Yeah.
And I've been a very big believer of, like, dude, you got one body, you got one vessel in this life. Like, you got two options. You either hate it for no reason, you hate it because other people tell you to hate it, or you fucking own it and you go, fuck yeah, I love this body.
And you have fun with it. Like, that's something you've taught me, is that, like, you know, like, makeup and beauty and all that is very much disposable. that like you just, okay, so you have fun with it. Is my makeup look everyone's favorite? No. Does it fucking matter? No. Do I like it? Yes.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters.
Yes. And that's my thing is like when you see someone and you're like, oh my God, this outfit is something else, but like you meet them and they're just so like confident. I'm like, fuck yeah, good for you. If that's what makes you feel like your best self, if dressing your vessel in this makes you feel like a fucking warrior, then go for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think it applies to so many things. So it's even like with art, like, okay, someone does a tattoo, then I'm like, that's fucking hideous. As long as it's done, it's executed well. That's all I care about. But stylistically, you have tattoos that stylistically, I'm like, oh, I don't love that stylistically. Yep. But are they executed well? Yes. Yeah. So then I'm like, bam, that's it. That's all I care about.
Okay. Yeah.
Is because like you love it and you rock the fuck out of it. And then because you rock the fuck out of it, I'm like, that's awesome. That's hot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The energy is so real and people can feel it, you know, when you really come into yourself and like come into, again, loving yourself and just owning it.
Yeah.
And I think there's only one more point I want to make about like growth, something that I've learned that I feel like no one ever really talks about coming into adulthood. And this is one thing that I've struggled with a lot. Not so much now, but no one told me as an adult that, so your life is always fluid. There's always going to be movement.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be different patterns and different things that happen. And so to be like real, I guess, and honest, I used to get really frustrated at myself for my like workout routine, whether it be in the morning or at night. And I'd get frustrated at myself, like, why the fuck do I not like nighttime workouts anymore? And that always happens during summer. And then during winter, I get really mad at myself, like, I can't work out in the morning anymore. Why isn't this working? Like, I just don't understand. But now I've come to realize, oh my God, like, your habits along with your life are meant to be fluid.
Yeah.
And the more you're accepting and flexible and fluid with your habits, stick with them, obviously, but like accept that they're not always going to look the same. Dude.
Absolutely.
This is being an adult.
It's the worst thing we do to kids.
Yeah.
We put them in this routine of school that says this is what it looks like every single day, 5 days a week. This is your life. You have this routine. You have this habit. And we don't give them the freedom to like kind of move around with that.
Yes. It's very concrete. Like this is like the time you wake up, when you get dressed, this is when you go to school, this is when you have a recess, and then this is when you go home.
Yep. And then this is when you go to bed.
Yeah.
And so by giving them this like very like set structure means that as we grow up, we tend to miss out on the idea that like, here, I can go to bed. I can fucking go to bed at 10 o'clock tonight. I can go to bed at fucking 1 a.m. Doesn't matter. And genuinely, whenever I go to bed is when I go to bed.
Yeah.
If I decide that's enough sleep, that's enough fucking sleep. And like being able to like ebb and flow with that instead of being like everything has to be structured.
Yes.
Is something that I think is like one of the best things that like I've learned is to just be like, oh no, sometimes you want to fucking work out at night. Perfect.
Yeah. Right.
But like you have to adjust your habits for whatever currently works for you.
Absolutely. Like, again, stick with your habits. And I think that was my problem is I was just so rigid with them a lot. And I did not give myself enough grace.
Why people quit. Is because people don't want to adjust and change to be like, hey, let me try something new. And then if this doesn't work, that's okay. Let me just fine tune it. They'll just fucking upend the whole thing. Or they'll say, hey, I'm going to just like start over completely instead of being like, let me just like wiggle stuff around and see what fits.
And see, constantly, your life is like a puzzle. You just constantly wiggle shit around.
Yeah, just constantly wiggling.
Yeah, figure out what works for you. Stick with your habits still, but know that like you do need to give yourself grace as an adult. Because like I totally struggled with that for a long time.
But not so much now.
Not so much anymore. I mean, I still get mad at myself every fall. Being like, why aren't I waking up early anymore? But then now I realize
maybe not this fall. Maybe this fall will be different.
We're hoping for different results, different feelings.
Okay, so thank you so much for everyone that has joined us. We're right at our 30-minute mark, so the camera's going to die in like 2 seconds.
Yep.
And we will be back next week. And thanks for your patience with us being sick and traveling.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Excited to come out with more episodes. So we will see you next week. Oh, thank you.